Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day you've given us, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for just another special Sabbath, Lord, another day that you created for us to be able to come to you, Lord, so that you can bless us even more, Lord. A day that we can come and remember the beauty of creation, Lord, and a home that we're going to, Lord. Father in heaven, I pray that you might be with each and every one of us here, Lord, that you pour out your Holy Spirit among each and every one of us, Lord, that we might be able to hear your word and see your word, Lord, and allow it to penetrate into our hearts, Lord, and allow your word to change lives. I ask that you speak to both Stacy and I today, Lord, and that we might step aside and allow you to speak to us. Amen. We love you, Father, and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, by the way, guys, it was actually really, just hearing you guys in worship, very different. It's actually pretty cool just to hear your voices. I just wanted to let you guys know that it was I need to flick the on button. You guys can hear me though, right? Is this better? Yes? No? Yeah. We'll start slowly then. That good? Yes? All right. So I actually thought the mic was on. I just didn't realize I had such a big mouth. But it was very, very cool just to hear everyone, singing and a cappella, right, with no music. So I'm actually looking forward to our closing song. So the title of today's sermon is, Where Are You Fishing? So by a show of hands, how many people here like to go fishing? Anyone here like to go fishing? I have a few, right? I actually like to go catching, right? Because sometimes you fish and you don't catch anything. So for me, the thrill of catching is more than kind of waiting, right? Although sometimes it's good to just sit there and relax. My boys actually, from when Kayla was a little kid, when we moved to Florida, we used to go fishing. And when my boys got a little older, probably about, I would say maybe 2 and 4 years old, anytime I wanted to go fishing, what do you think they wanted to do? You think they wanted to stay home? No, man, they wanted to fish, right? And it was interesting because, they would actually, we do catch and release. I can remember them being tiny little kids, and they would actually pet the fish, right? So we'd catch a largemouth bass, we'd pull the bass out of the water, and before they let the fish go, you would see them just stroking the fish, right, and petting the fish, and then they kind of let the fish go gently. And then, I think Micah's 13 now, in roughly 10 years of fishing, do you know that we've never lost a fish except when we took Pastor Steve fishing? So we had a streak of 10 years where we were able to successfully get the hook out, set the fish in the water. Sometimes if we had little food, we put food in its mouth and just kind of like let the fish go. And sure enough, we take the pastor with us and we lost our first fish, right? So I like to fish, so if you can show a couple of the pictures we have. This is Micah as a little one. This is back when I was afraid of fish and actually wore a glove. Look at the little plastic utensil I have in the other hand. That's Micah staring at the fish. Go to the next picture, please. This is Micah, I think last year, with the fish saying hello. Next picture. Oh, that's not any of us. I think something got wrong with the pictures, but I thought there was a few more. There's no more pictures of my family. Just strange people fishing in holes. Yes. So there's many different kinds of fishing. This fishing, I'm not sure how successful he's going to be, but it's worth a shot, right? Next picture, please. You can also fish this way. You know, right? You can learn from the experts. I don't recommend fishing this way. It looks a little difficult. It looks dangerous, quite frankly. So I don't know that you want to go down this path either. Next picture, please. This is fishing. Right? I mean, who would like to fish like that? Just leap into the water with a spear, like every kid, every guy raised their hand like, yeah, that's fishing. Right? That's actually me with a tan and hair. Next, you know what though, but there's fishing. I'm going to show you guys how I really fish. Next picture, please. That's how I fish normally with the boys. That's actually me and the boys fishing on our stilts. Actually, are we missing a picture there? Isn't there a picture of a guy walking with a shark on his back? Yes. Sometimes I just get a little upset, go in the water and beat a fish up, and then just come out with him on my back. And then next picture. I was so fascinated by this, by the way. Could you imagine fishing like this? How do they even get up there? And then they actually look pretty comfortable, right? I can't even get comfortable on a chair, right? And these guys are actually on like some sort of still. But bottom line, there's many different kinds of fishing. You know, right? And you can take that off the screen. But there's many different kinds of fishing. And I can remember being a little kid and my dad taking me fishing for the first time. I was about 4 or 5 years old. And when I was young, just like my kids, I wanted to be around, when your kids are little, especially little boys, they want to be around their dad. Right? So my dad had a fishing trip planned. And the neighbor upstairs, we lived in an apartment building, the neighbor upstairs said, his name was Rafa. Rafa said, hey, I'm going to take you guys fishing. And as soon as I heard about this trip, I said, Dad, wake me up. I want to go fishing. Never been fishing before. So I want to point out that we were Catholic, you know, right? And my dad, you know, it's part of socially, they drank and everything else. But we go fishing, and Rafa basically has a couple of 5-gallon buckets, and he's got beer, and he's got fishing line, right? And what they basically did was, as they drank, a can would become available, and then you'd wrap the fishing line around the can, and that's how you fished, you know, right? So Rafa had a spot to go fishing, and my dad always said, Rafa knows how to fish. So sure enough, we go to this dock, you know, or a pier, if you will, and we're standing there. I don't even remember if we actually put worms or something on the hooks, but it's about 4 in the morning, pitch black, and it's me, Rafa, my dad, and Rafa's son, Joel. And we're all fishing. And nothing's happening. We're just standing there, getting cold. And Rafa says, don't worry about it. The fish are coming. Right? And it's dark, and we're just standing there. And I asked my dad, Dad, how do I know I caught a fish? And he's like, I'll tell you when you catch a fish, right? And sure enough, I'm there, and he tells me how to hold the can. I have the can in my hand. And then all of a sudden, you almost hear it before you see it. A bunch of fish start swimming underneath right where we were standing. And it was striped bass. And when I tell you, I caught my first fish, and it was this big. I was 6, right? It could have been this big. I have no idea. The story's gotten bigger as I've gotten older, right? But I catch my first striped bass, and Joel gets a fish on the line. The striped bass pulls him into the water, so my dad dives off the dock because Joel can't swim, so he pulls Joel back. Make a long story short, we end up leaving with those 5-gallon buckets full of striped bass. And when I tell you, you couldn't, the water just even changed. I remember the water just even changed color. There was so many fish, right? And then we went home. We all smelled like fish. Everyone was happy, right? Now, many of Jesus' disciples as you know, were also fishermen. So turn with me to Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. So the book of Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. Luke is before John, after Mark. I think you guys will probably find it before I do. Okay, Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. And it says, on one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. And he saw 2 boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. So, when do you wash your nets? Before or after you fish? After, right? So the disciples, or Peter and the crew, right? They had just finished fishing, and you're going to go through the nets to make sure that there's no tears, right, in the nets, to take little mollusk off, to make sure the nets are good for the next time you use them. Right? So they're bringing these nets in. Okay? And getting into one of the boats, in verse 3, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. So this boat is on shore. Jesus tells them, hey, there's a crowd of people here. Why don't we push off a little bit? Let's anchor a few feet into the water to let the people come close so that I can teach them. And Simon Peter says, sure thing. Can't you guys picture it? Can't you guys picture this boat in a few feet of water with Jesus standing on the top of it? A crowd of people sitting on the beach. I could almost hear his voice carry. Right? As he talks to the people and he shares with the people. And he's done sharing with the people, right? And in verse 4, and when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into the deep and let your nets down for a catch. So here he tells Simon Peter, what? Let's go fishing. What has Simon just finished doing? He had just finished fishing. Do you think Simon knows a little bit about fishing, Simon Peter? He's a fisherman, right? He knows a little. So Simon Peter responds to him, and he says, and Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. Simon Peter here is trying to give Jesus a little advice. He's saying, hey, I just came back from fishing in this lake. There's no fish there right now. We're going to waste time. I was there all night. Let's save some time, right? Let's not even do this. But you know what? There's that little glimmer of faith and hope in Simon, right? And he wants to be obedient. And he says, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets. So, he tells Jesus, tries to talk him out of it, but then he says, hey, do you want to go fishing? Fishing we shall go. Right? So, I want everyone to turn with me quickly to the book of John. Book of John, chapter 21. So the book of John, chapter 21, verses 1 through 3. So Jesus had died and was resurrected again by this time. And it says in verse 1, after this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. And he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. Right? So Simon Peter wanted to do what? He's going to go fish. Right? He had spent all this time preaching and teaching with Jesus. He had been casting out demons. And here he has a little bit of downtime near the lake. He goes, you know what? I'm going fishing. And some of his disciples, right? So they said to him, we will go with you. They went out into the boat, But that night, they caught nothing. Alright, so they go fishing, they don't catch anything. You know, it's funny, whenever you mention the name Rafa to my dad, right? One of the first things that comes out of his mouth when you mention his name is, oh, you say, hey man, have you heard from Rafa? He goes, oh, Rafa, man, that guy was a good fisherman. You know, right? So to this day, he remembers that, hey, if you wanted to fish, Rafa was your guy. You know, right? So I read the Bible, and I'm like, I never want to go fishing with Peter. Every time he goes out, he doesn't catch anything. You know, right? He stinks. You know, so, but you got to realize that sometimes when we fish, we don't catch anything. It's just the luck of the draw, as they say. Sometimes you're going to catch a ton, sometimes you're not going to catch anything. And you know, this got me thinking that we're always fishing. I repeat myself. In our day-to-day lives, we are always fishing. And I'm going to explain a little bit. Some of us are fishing for compliments. Right? So, I'm going to pick on the ladies, just because I'm up here and you're not. But ladies get dressed up, they put on their Sabbath vest, they put on the special Sabbath perfume, they look really nice. I don't have this problem, but they spend some time on their hair, you know, right? And they come to church with their new stuff on, or maybe they go to work, right? And they get really dolled up, and they're fishing. They're waiting for that person to say, you smell nice. What is that perfume you're wearing? Oh, it's blah, 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 right? Or they say, did you do something different to your... Yes, I cut my hair, can't you tell? You know, right? Or it's, yes, I got this outfit here. So some of us are fishing for compliments. Now, if you're fishing for compliments from your husband, that's not bad. So, some of us, right? Maybe we're not fishing for compliments. Maybe some of us are fishing for praise. Doesn't this sound good, right? What a hard worker he is. You see how he did that all by himself? Man, that guy's strong. You know, right? My dad, I love my dad. My dad falls into this category. You know, right? Like, my dad can outwork anyone, and he knows it. Right? So, like, I remember being little, and there was a baseball field, and apparently there was a pipe underneath that they needed to do something for, and instead of hiring like a bulldozer to do it, my dad was like, I got it. You know, right? And he took a shovel and a pick, and 8 feet by 4 feet later, you know, right? Like my dad standing in a hole above the pipe. You know, right? And everyone's like, no one can work harder than Felipe. So I just gave up when I was little. I'm lazy. But people fish for different things. Okay? Some of us, and unfortunately I fall into this category, especially when I was younger, some of us fish for trouble. You know, right? Especially when I wasn't Christian. You know, you're looking for, you know, for some action, or you're looking for problems. You know, right? So some of us go fishing that way. And you know, and just to show you how people fish and they don't realize, the things we do will draw attention. People are watching you. Everything you do. You know what? You guys all left for church on Saturday morning. Your neighbors saw you get in the car all dressed up. Where do they think you're going? That's right, to the Jehovah's Witness temple. Right? But they see you get dressed up, they know you're going where? Church. Right? You know, your neighbors are watching. You have a barbecue in the backyard and you don't invite your neighbor, they know they didn't get invited. Right? They can smell the burnt flesh cooking. Right? So, I went to pick up Kayla the other day. And Kayla was working and I'm waiting in the car. And I see this. my phone. I see a guy about 60-something years old. And I see a guy walking. And he's walking like this. What do you think he was doing? Everyone take a guess what he was doing? Pokemon. I mean, he's 60-something. Look at Felipe nodding his head. So, you know what's funny is that he crosses like two other little kids, and the little kids are like this. You know, right? They're fishing, right, by their actions. One of our youth was in my house recently, and he was doing this Pokemon thing, and he actually had two kids come up to him and say, "Hey, are you playing Pokemon?" Right? People are watching. So whether you realize it or not, you're constantly casting. The bait might be different, but you're constantly casting something. So you're going to run into a lot of people in your lives. So I'm going to do a little math with you guys. I tried to figure out how many people we would meet in our entire lifetime. And I figured someone's done a study somewhere, but I hopped on all these different things and everyone had different numbers. So I just said, you know what, none of these numbers make sense. I'm going to try to come up with a number with my church family. So the average, I think men on average live to about 72, 73 years old, roughly. I might be wrong by a couple of years. I think women live a little longer because once you've killed off your husband with all the stress, you get to enjoy a couple of years, right? So, the men live to about 72, women live to about 78, so let's just say the average is about 75. Can we agree 75 is a decent number? Right? So, let's say that for the first 10 years of your life, you can't remember really anyone you meet. You know, right? So we're going to throw those first 10 years out. Okay? So that gives us 65 good years of meeting people. We agree? Yes? Alright, so there are how many days in a year? There are 365 and a quarter days in a year, because every 4 years we have a leap year. So I'm going to multiply that by 65. I come up with 23,741 days during those 65 years. So we have 23,000 days. How many people do you think you meet on a daily basis? Whether it's talking to the phone, whether it's going to the supermarket, your cashier, whether it's a coworker, a new coworker you meet, someone you meet on social media, how many people do you think you maybe have access to on a daily basis? Would you say that at least, would you say one person is a fair number? There's got to be more than one, right? Would you say two? One and two? What about five? Would you say five is a fair number? 5 people, right? Roughly. So I'm going to take 23,741 and multiply that by 5. And I come up with 118,706 and a quarter people. That's how, I don't know what a quarter person looks like, but you came up with 118,706 people that during your lifetime you will have access to in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of fish in the ocean. That's 118,000 lives that you can choose to impact positively or negatively. That's a lot of people. And now, I don't even want to take it the next step, but what if those 118,000 people followed suit and they decided to be a positive influence on just a handful, 10 people, let's say, right? The numbers begin to add up. So, you know, we have a chance to impact a lot of people in our lives. And I'm going to have someone, I'm going to have Stacy join me up here and share a little bit about his week and about some of the fishing that he's done. All right, so Stacy.
Happy Sabbath.
Sabbath.
Yeah? Okay. Well, so this week, or last week, I got a call from Felipe, Robles, calling me, and no, it's not working.
Turn it on.
It is on. There you go. Okay. So I got a call from Felipe Robles this week to do a favor. And usually when that happens, I'm thinking I'm going to help him with his yard or with his home moving or something like that. And while I'm listening, he's like, could you do a favor for God? And I'm like, oh no, I'm scared now. He's like, can you speak in front of the church? And I'm like, oh no. And whenever he said that, my heart just dropped. I was like, this is gonna be hard, you know. But you know, in my mind, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. That's it. I was scared, but I was kind of shivering a little bit, but I was like, I'm just gonna do it, whatever. And while that was happening and I was listening, I kind of already had a little bit of what I was gonna talk to. Not really, but yes and no. So I ended up praying, and I prayed, and I was like, Lord, show me something that I can talk about, because I honestly don't know what to talk about. And with that, I had a friend of mine from high school that I played soccer with, and he was an athlete, and he was also a musician, but then he ended up going to the musician part. He was trying to become, you know, famous, or like, just kind of getting into the music industry. He had a talent, but his music taste was not as quite as I liked. It was different. So I told him I was going to buy his CD. And when that happened, I honestly did not want to go buy his CD. I had no gas in my car. I had the yellow thing was popping, and I had the $10 in my pocket. So I'm like, I'm going to spend the $10 on the CD, or I'm going to put gas. So I ended up going, and I ended up buying his CD, and I ended up having a conversation with him. And while I'm having the conversation with him, you know, he's telling me about his life and how he's, you know, trying to succeed with his music and all that. And I'm just listening, and we probably talked for maybe 20 minutes or so. And while that's happening, I'm just listening, and out of nowhere, I was like, can I pray with you? And he just looked at me, and he was like, what? Like, that's not you, Stacy, you know? Like, you'd never pray with me at school playing soccer or anything like that. So I asked him if I could pray with him, and he was like, no. He shot me down. He basically shot me down, and I was like, oops, like, now what do? Like, I just got shot down. And with that, I was like, you know what? And then we had a little conversation after, but I told him, I was like, I'll still pray for you. It's okay. And he looked at me, he was like, thank you, man. I respect you. And from there on, he left. And I left. And after that, I realized I was rejected. And I was like, oh, well, I'll still pray for him, right? And while I was driving back home, I ended up calling Felipe Robles, and I told him about it. And I was like, so I just got rejected, like, in front of my face in my car, actually, with no gas and no CD, with a CD that I'm not going to listen to. So with that, I'm in, and I'm telling him, and he tells me, he kind of gives me a challenge for this week. And he told me, he was like, why don't you pick 10 people, strange people that you do not know, you've never seen, and like where you work or anything, where you can go and pray with them. And I'm there, I'm kind of like, dude, I just got rejected by someone I know. And trying to make me, you know, talk to people I don't know, you know. So I was like, okay, whatever, I'll do it. So after that, I went to go put gas finally. I still had probably a little miles left. I went to go put gas. And while I'm putting gas, I'm kind of just looking around. I'm like, looking, I'm creeping on people. I'm like, who can I go and pray with, right? And then I see this guy, he's probably my age. He has kind of like a cigarette in his mouth, tattoos and stuff. I'm looking at him. I'm literally just looking at him. And he kind of looks at me, you know? Like, it's kind of creepy, you know? And then he's just looking at me, and I'm like, oh, like, this is weird. Like, this dude's gonna think I'm gonna rob him or something, because I wasn't dressed properly, honestly. I was looking pretty bad. So I basically chickened out. I was like, I can't do this. Like, that's too hard. Like, I can't just go ask somebody to go pray with me. So I chickened out, and I was like, I put gas, and I went back home. I drove back home, and while I'm driving, like, I need to do this. So I get home, and I see my unattractive hug that I hope they put right here on the screen. I don't know, maybe. You see, there he is, right there. His name's Slater. Slater he's a cute dog, but he's not at the same time. But, so I end up going to go walk Slater in my neighborhood. And this is at maybe 10:30 at night, maybe not the best time to go walk the dog. But I go walk him, and while at the end of the walk, maybe 20 minutes after, I'm just thinking, I see this Chihuahua. And I'm looking at the Chihuahua, and I see the mother, and I see her kid with her. It's probably like 7 years old. And my dog, Slater, starts sniffing, you know, the Chihuahua. I forgot his name. I think it was Baco or something. So it starts talking to the dog, and with that, I start speaking to the lady. She speaks Spanish. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I started communicating with her, and one of her friends came, and from there on, we kind of had a conversation over the dog and how dogs react to each other. But what ended up happening, her friend came and her daughter came downstairs to come play with the dogs. I don't know. And with that, I was like, out of nowhere again, I came and I was like, can I pray with you? And then they kind of just looked at me. The lady was kind of like shocked, like, what? And I was like, can I pray with you? And she's like, yeah, of course. So then the lady, her friend, asked me, so what do you believe in? I was like, I believe in God. And she was like, well, what's your religion? Like, you know, what do you do? I'm like, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. And I kind of gave her this process of, you know, what we do in church and all that. And with that, I ended up praying with her son, her friend, and her daughter. I did maybe a quick 30-second, 40-second prayer, which honestly I was scared to death. I was like, I don't even know how I did it. I don't know if you guys ever felt that thing where it just happened out of nowhere and you kind of just did it. And that's what happened. So that was the 4 people I had. So I'm like, I have 6 more. Good, I have 6 more. And so with that, I go to work. Actually with Gabriel, he's in the back, and we have these pamphlets, right? And I have these pamphlets, and I hand one to Gabriel, like, yo, let's try to give this to some people, and he looks like, okay, and he's more tougher than I am, he just starts giving it. We end up giving, so I end up knocking on my boss's door, and while I'm knocking on my boss's door, this guy's kind of like looking at me like he's like, it's like I'm gonna steal the place or something. I was dressed all dirty as well again. And I was dirty, and I knocked on the door, and there's nobody in there. So after that, the guy that I gave the pamphlet to, he came in to go check, like, I don't know what he went to go check, but he went to go check something. And then I went and I stopped it, and I was like, me and Gabriel were like, can we pray with you? And then he kind of looked at us, and he was kind of like backing away, and me and Gabriel was kind of just looking at him, and so he ended up praying with us, which it was like a 30-second prayer as well. So that was my 5th experience. So my other experience was at Prosperity Bank on LBJ. I got my money right after work, and I was happy. And I went to go deposit the money in my bank account, and right when I'm coming out, I kind of see this elderly woman walking, and she's slow, like, not breathing too well, honestly. And I'm like, oh, she doesn't look too well. So I looked at her, and I had this is what I was using, the Promise of Peace. So I had this, and right when I was about to give her and talk to her, and I kind of showed her a little bit about it, she looked at me and she was like, nope. And I'm like, okay. Poof, shot down. Okay, and I was like, all right, bye-bye, have a great day. Go get some money or something. So I went, I got in my car, and yesterday night, so that was 7 people. I needed 3 more. And honestly, it's hard to do. Like, for me, it was kind of hard for me to just go out and ask people to pray, but I went last night right here in the Allen Outlets, IPIC Theater area, and I saw this mom with her 2 teenage boys playing Pokemon. And I looked, and I was like, they're playing Pokemon. I'm just gonna try to hand this little Go track to them. And right when I was gonna hand it and try to talk, like, oh, can I speak with you? And I kind of showed her a little bit. She's like, no, thank you. So right there was the other shutdown. And the other person that was actually walking over there, I don't know where he was from, but he was actually kind of nice to me. He kind of looked at me, and I asked him, like, can I talk to you for a second? And I showed him that as well. And I asked him if I could pray with him, and he looked at me and was like, no, thank you. I'm like, okay, no problem. So, my point is, I think most of you know me, or grew up with me, or see me, and most of you will never see me up here, not talking. And my point is, if I did it, I'm pretty sure each one of you can. It's hard. I think sometimes it's easier for us to go out and talk about clothes or something, I don't know, outfits or the shopping center, but it becomes more difficult whenever we have to go and talk about God. And it's hard, and I had to pray about it, and I'm going to still try continuing it. And with that said, I think we should be fish of men, and we need to try to spread the word and continue on with his message. So if I did it, I'm pretty sure all of you can do it, at least how Felipe said. He was talking about, we meet 118,000 people throughout our lifetime. And I think we can impact people, and it's really not hard. It's just a yes or a no, and that's it. They say yes, nice. We go and talk to them, no, bye, I'll still pray for you. So with that said, I want to bring back Felipe to end with the hook. And from there on.
Thank you, Stacy. That was awesome, wasn't it?
Yes.
By changing the bait, right? Stacy changed his bait this week. What is the bait that we use, right? It's changing our attitude, right? Changing our desires. He didn't say it was easy. He didn't come up here and say it's easy. I'll tell you what, it gets easier after that first one. Right? And I think we spoke, he also had a chance to pray with his sister and some other folks that he knew, but they didn't count. But I think when everything was said and done, you were 8 out of 12. 8 out of 12 people that were approached said yes to prayer. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty high success rate, right? So by changing our attitude, by changing our desire, we can catch a lot of fish. There's a lot of fish that's still to be caught. We're going to close in a minute. I just want to, we're going to go quickly to 2 verses. Go to Luke chapter 5. So Luke chapter 5, verses 5 through 8. And then Luke 5, 5 through 8. So in verse 5, and Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets. And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boats to come and help them, and they came and filled the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I am a sinful man. And then in verse 10, At the end of verse 10, and Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. And when they have brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. My question for everyone here is, are you willing to leave everything and follow him? It doesn't take a lot. You're going to meet 118,000 people in your lives. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you only meet 50,000. I could be way off that number. But you're still going to meet a lot of people. I'm not asking you to baptize each and every one of them, although that would be very cool. But I do think that we need to do a better job with our fishing. And we need to, the people that we meet, what's the worst thing that can happen if you ask to have a word of prayer with them? They say no. If you need used to someone saying no, just call me, ask me for anything. I can start training with you and just say no over and over and over again. And we can get through that barrier. But I just wanted to share with you that God is calling us to forsake everything and follow him and start fishing.